She changed our lives. And since then, we have had two more. Amy is 10 and Benji's 9. And we sing on the weekends, and we still write songs, and Bill publishes.
For decades, Bill and Gloria Gaither stood as one of the most beloved couples in Christian music. Together, they didn't just sing songs, they shared messages of hope, faith, and love that reached millions across the globe. From their concerts to their ministry, they seemed to be the picture of unity. Fans saw them holding hands, smiling warmly at each other, and delivering heartfelt performances that often brought audiences to tears. To the public, their bond appeared unbreakable. Their marriage wasn't just a love story, it was an example of what faith and partnership could achieve. Over the years, they became symbols of stability in an industry where relationships often faced challenges. That's why when whispers of trouble between them began to spread, people didn't believe it at first. But those whispers grew louder, turning into rumors of separation and even divorce. For many, it was unthinkable. How could a couple so in love, so united in purpose, be drifting apart? As speculation grew, people waited for answers. And then, after a long silence, Gloria finally spoke out. Her words weren't filled with anger or accusations, but with deep honesty about the struggles they faced behind closed doors. Her story revealed that even the most admired relationships can carry hidden pain, and that what the public sees is not always the full truth. According to Gloria, their marriage didn't suddenly collapse because of one event. It was a slow change, starting with small cracks that grew over time. In the early years, both were full of energy and passion, balancing their music career with family life. They shared the stage, wrote songs together, and built a strong ministry. But as the years passed, the demands of their public life began to take a toll. Touring schedules were exhausting, public appearances were endless, and the expectation to always appear joyful left little space for personal rest. Gloria recalled long stretches when they barely had time to talk, even though they were constantly in the same room or traveling together. The connection that once felt effortless started to require more effort, and they didn't always have the strength to give it. Fans continued to see them as a perfect duo, but in private, their conversations became fewer, and their shared moments rarer. Instead of spending evenings together in peace, they were often preparing for the next event, writing new songs, or managing ministry responsibilities. Over time, the emotional distance grew. What began as a busy lifestyle turned into a barrier between them. By the time rumors started reaching the public, the gap between them had been forming for years. One of the biggest challenges Gloria revealed was the pressure of living in the public eye. Bill and Gloria weren't just musicians, they were seen as spiritual leaders and role models for countless believers. That came with expectations that they would always have the perfect marriage, the perfect attitude, and the perfect faith. Gloria admitted that at first, this kind of admiration felt encouraging. But over time, it became heavy, almost suffocating. Whenever they attended church events or concerts, they were expected to be a shining example of unity, even if they had argued just hours before. There was no space for them to simply be a normal couple, with ups and downs like anyone else. Fans wanted them to be flawless, and the industry reinforced that image. This constant pressure made it harder for them to address their private struggles. Instead of sitting down to have honest conversations, they often chose to push issues aside to keep up appearances. Gloria confessed that she sometimes wished they could disappear for a while, to take a break from the spotlight and just be themselves without worrying about what the world thought. But their careers didn't allow for that. The cycle of performing, traveling, and meeting expectations never slowed down, and it quietly drained the strength of their relationship. Another factor that deeply affected their marriage was Bill's health. Over the years, his energy began to decline, and he withdrew more from public life. For someone who had always been a vibrant presence on stage, this change was hard on both of them. Gloria suddenly found herself taking on more responsibilities, not just in their music and ministry, but also in caring for him at home. While she loved and supported her husband, she admitted that the balance in their relationship shifted. She began to feel more like a caretaker than a wife, and this emotional shift created an even greater distance between them. It wasn't that they stopped loving each other, but the nature of their connection changed. Instead of sharing dreams and plans for the future, they were often focused on simply getting through each day's challenges. The demands of the ministry didn't slow down to match their personal struggles. Gloria often felt torn between fulfilling their public commitments and addressing the needs of their marriage. She also faced her own exhaustion, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The weight of carrying both their careers and their relationship became too much over time. This gradual strain, more than any single event, contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. When Gloria finally addressed the divorce publicly, she made it clear that it wasn't caused by betrayal, infidelity, or a dramatic fight. Instead, it was the result of years of slowly drifting apart. They had started as partners in every sense, in love, in work, in faith. But life pulled them in different directions. Gloria described it as emotional neglect, not out of malice, but simply from being consumed by everything else. The demands of their careers, the constant public image to maintain, and the challenges of Bill's health all contributed to their growing distance. Even though they still cared deeply for each other, their marriage no longer gave them the closeness they once had. Over time, they realized that their futures no longer aligned. Divorce wasn't a decision made in anger, it was a decision made in acceptance. They both recognized that staying together in the same way wasn't healthy for either of them. Gloria said that it was one of the hardest realizations of her life, but also one of the most honest. Sometimes, love changes form. It doesn't disappear, but it shifts into a different kind of care, one that exists outside of marriage. Gloria spoke openly about the emotional journey she went through before deciding on divorce. She said it wasn't just about losing a husband, but about closing a chapter that had defined much of her life. For decades, she had been part of the Bill and Gloria team, in music, ministry, and public life. Letting go meant redefining who she was outside of that identity. She admitted there were nights she cried, feeling the weight of the years they had spent together. The decision didn't erase the memories of their love or the work they had built side by side. But she also recognized that holding on to a marriage that no longer worked would only bring more pain in the long run. Accepting this truth required courage, and sharing it with the world took even more. Gloria wanted people to understand that divorce doesn't always mean failure. In her case, it was about creating space for both of them to live healthier, more fulfilling lives apart. She hoped her honesty would encourage others who felt trapped in similar situations to find the strength to make the choices that were right for them. Since the divorce, Gloria has focused on rebuilding her life and rediscovering herself as an individual. For many years, she was seen primarily as Bill's wife and musical partner. Now, she's exploring her own passions, dreams, and goals. She has continued her involvement in music, but also taken time to work on personal projects and causes close to her heart. Gloria describes this chapter of her life as one of reinvention. She's learning to stand on her own, not in the shadow of a shared public image, but as a woman with her own voice. She has embraced new challenges, from community involvement to creative endeavors, finding joy in discovering who she is apart from her marriage. While the divorce was a painful experience, it also gave her the freedom to live more authentically. Gloria believes that sometimes, endings are simply the doorway to new beginnings. And though the public may always remember her as part of a duo, she is determined to write the next chapters of her life on her own terms. Even though their marriage has ended, Bill and Gloria's shared legacy in Christian music remains strong. The songs they wrote together continue to inspire and comfort people all over the world. Fans still cherish the memories of seeing them perform, and their work has left a lasting impact on the faith community. Gloria hopes that people will remember not just their music, but also the message behind it, that faith can guide you through both joy and hardship. She knows that some fans were saddened or even shocked by the news of their divorce, but she believes their story can also be a reminder that even those in the public eye are human. Love, faith, and partnership are complex, and sometimes the bravest act is to acknowledge when it's time to let go. For Gloria, this chapter of her life is about honoring the past while moving forward with strength and grace. And for those who followed their journey, it's a chance to see that endings can lead to new beginnings, and that the heart can heal even after saying goodbye. For decades, Bill and Gloria Gaither were more than just a married couple, they were a brand, a ministry, and a movement within Christian music. They didn't simply perform songs, they delivered messages that touched hearts, strengthened faith, and brought people closer to God. The couple's chemistry on stage was undeniable. Bill's warm charisma paired with Gloria's thoughtful lyrics created a sense of authenticity that fans could feel. They sang not just about faith, but about life's struggles, offering comfort and encouragement to those who listened. Off stage, they seemed inseparable, often appearing together at events, interviews, and church gatherings. The world saw them as a shining example of what marriage could be when built on love, trust, and shared purpose. To fans, they weren't just performers, they were role models. That's why when quiet rumors of trouble started to emerge, people resisted believing them. After all, how could a couple so devoted to God and to each other face such challenges? But as time went on, the whispers grew louder, and speculation turned into widespread conversation. Supporters and fellow musicians alike wanted answers. Gloria later revealed that the breakdown of their marriage wasn't sudden, it was gradual, almost unnoticeable at first. They had built a life around music, travel, and ministry, and in the early days, that shared mission brought them closer. They were a team in every sense of the word. But life on the road was exhausting. Tours stretched for weeks, sometimes months, leaving little room for rest. Even when they were home, preparations for the next performance or project began almost immediately. Gloria recalled how rare it became for them to simply sit together and talk without thinking about work. At first, the distance felt temporary, just a side effect of being busy. But slowly, it became their normal. The laughter, deep conversations, and quiet moments they once shared grew fewer. It was as if their marriage had been put on autopilot, running smoothly in public while quietly losing connection in private. Gloria Gaither spent in the public eye alongside Bill Gaither. She was subjected to a great deal of strain, and once the couple divorced, she found herself in unfamiliar territory for the first time in years. She was by herself in the spotlight that had previously been shining on them. As a couple gave the impression that it had moved away, despite the fact that the public had always admired their dynamic. As a musical power couple, the change in her personal life meant that she had to emerge from the shadow of Bill and face the world on her own. In the aftermath of her divorce, Gloria underwent a change that was not only about physical space, but also about emotional liberation. She had been married to Bill Gaither for a very long time, and her identity was inextricably linked to the public persona of being his wife. Now that she was no longer in that relationship, Gloria was taking the time to find who she was for herself. She contemplated the fact that her time spent in the limelight frequently made it challenging for her to concentrate on her own personal development. Being in the public required her to continuously conform to expectations, maintain a certain image, and live up to the expectations that others had of her in terms of what she ought to be. On the other hand, she discovered the space to breathe, reflect, and begin over when she was by herself. The time that she has spent away from the theater has been formative for her. Gloria has welcomed seclusion in the time for introspection, rather than lingering on the past, but instead focusing on the present through the process of re-establishing a connection with her own creative side. She has started pursuing projects that she had previously neglected. She said that her enthusiasm for music in the ministry had never decreased, but that she was now able to approach it in a manner that was distinctively her own personal style. For the first time in years, Gloria is living the public image of Bill and Gloria was more than a name, it was an expectation. Fans admired them as a flawless Christian couple, and that came with immense pressure. Gloria admitted that in the early years, she loved the idea of being a role model. But over time, the weight of that responsibility became overwhelming. No matter how they felt privately, they had to smile, hold hands, and speak words of encouragement. Even if they had disagreed moments before stepping on stage, the show went on, and the audience saw only harmony. Gloria sometimes wished for a life away from the cameras, where they could be imperfect without fear of judgment. But the nature of their careers didn't allow for that. Their livelihood depended on their public image, and so the performance, both musical and marital, continued. Over time, the effort to maintain this illusion became exhausting, slowly eroding their personal connection. Bill's declining health introduced another challenge that neither of them had fully prepared for. The man who had once been full of energy and creativity began to slow down. Gloria found herself stepping into new roles, not just as a musical partner, but as a caretaker. This change altered the dynamic of their relationship in ways that were hard to accept. While Gloria loved Bill deeply, she began to feel more like a nurse than a wife. They stopped dreaming about the future and focused more on managing daily life. At the same time, their public commitments didn't ease up. Gloria was caught between meeting professional expectations and caring for her husband, leaving little energy to nurture their marriage. The stress took its toll, creating emotional distance even as they worked side by side. When Gloria finally addressed the divorce publicly, she wanted to be clear: there was no scandal, no affair, no dramatic fight that ended their marriage. Instead, it was the slow, steady drifting apart that comes when two people are pulled in different directions for too long. She described it as years of emotional neglect, not intentional, but the byproduct of a life consumed by everything except the marriage itself. Despite caring for each other deeply, they reached a point where they realized they could no longer meet each other's emotional needs. Divorce, in their case, was not an act of anger but of acceptance. Letting go of the marriage was one of the most difficult decisions of Gloria's life. She wasn't just losing a partner, she was saying goodbye to decades of shared dreams, struggles, and triumphs.